Greetings, dear friends and our English-speaking audience. My name is Vasil Pekno. I'm a Ukrainian journalist who has been covering the events on the front lines through the entire period of the full-scale invasion of Russia here to Ukraine. Join us to watch this latest update on Ukrainian battlefield map as of June the 13th. Please like this video, leave your comments below, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let me begin by stating that the current situation on the battlefield is really very difficult and very hard. Ukraine is possibly facing the most challenging circumstances in the past 1.5 or 2 years. So I'll explain everything what is going on right now in this video. Please join. Let's start.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
So probably the most important thing to pay attention to is that overall, if you look at the front right now, the situation is objectively very difficult for us. Honestly, without sugarcoating it, I'll say that it's very difficult. This might be the most difficult situation in the past 6 months. Why? Because the enemy has really started to apply pressure in many directions, and it's hard to hold them back. These directions are Sumy, and these directions are the northern part of the Kharkiv region. These directions include the area around Vovchansk. These directions include the Kupiansk region. These directions are Lyman and also the Sivershchina area. In general, the entire Donetsk operational zone is facing an innumerable number of attacks. The situation in Zaporizhia, the recent attacks carried out by the enemy and other Zaporizhia, meaning closer to Donetsk, and Zaporizhia directly near the highway towards the settlement of Zaporizhia. And in the Kherson region, the fighting does not subside. And in fact, the intensity of the enemy's offensive is currently very high. As President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, stated yesterday, the Russians have been at the peak of their offensive for about 18 to 19 days. It has actually been almost 3 weeks since they launched their massive offensive. And frankly, holding it back is very difficult. That's why I'm honestly saying that the situation is one of the most difficult in the past year and a half, maybe even longer. In some places we have successes, in others we have setbacks. If we talk about the Sumy region, a place that has received a lot of attention lately, yesterday the president announced that we have local counterattacks there. From what I know, that is indeed the case. In this regard, without going into detail, we can highlight the areas of Yunakivka and Myropilya, although in fact the situation in Yunakivka is quite difficult, considering that fighting is already taking place within the settlement itself. As you can see, there is, so to speak, a gray zone here. To say that the enemy has been completely stopped here would be, let's say, somewhat premature, but I will repeat, there really are certain successes in the area of these two settlements, as well as in Yablonivka. Here, the third one can be highlighted in this way, although at the same time, the enemy infantry, let's mark our successes in blue like this: Yablonivka, Yunakivka, and in the area of Myropilya. As for the enemy troops, what can be said with certainty is that they are present in a number of settlements. Volodymyrivka, 100%, Oleksivka, 100%. Next is Kindrativka. Then undoubtedly, well, all the settlements along the border: Basivka, Loknya, Novenke, Juravka, Vasilivka, Bilovody. In fact, all those locations that were previously marked as the red zone on the deep state mapal, these locations remain occupied by the enemy. As far as I know, I repeat, there is still no heavy equipment on the territory of Ukraine, but the situation remains extremely difficult because, yes, the enemy has started to hold on tooth and nail. As can be seen now, there is no rapid further advance by them, but it is unknown how much further the enemy is prepared to go in terms of reinforcing its reserves in the Sumy region by regrouping from other areas, because there has already been information that the enemy is moving its resources from the south to the Kursk region and then to the Sumy region. Accordingly, if they continue to strengthen their grouping here, further advances by the enemy are likely. But as of today, we can say that there is relative stabilization even with our counter successes. At the same time, the Russians are already starting to experience some tension in terms of minor social unrest, although, of course, for the Russians, any social tension does not have such a decisive significance. What does it consist of? There is a platoon commander from the Wagner PMC with the call sign relay, Yesterday, he recorded a video message in which he complained that during the assaults on Kondrativkatis, is the village of Kondrativka, in the direction of Khotin, so someone close to him took part in these assaults, and according to him, they are nothing more than cannon fodder. The statistics that this relay provides, I'll let you listen to his video now. He will explain everything in detail there over the course of 2 minutes. And in fact, there's a big angry address from a former Wagner platoon commander. So the main thing, the number you need to hear, he says that Russians are being sent to slaughter here in such numbers. I've always said this. In Sumy region right now, territory is being traded for a huge number of Russian lives. Out of the company, out of 100 men, only 8 survived the assault. 8 out of 100 men. Just imagine the scale of these losses. Well, let's listen for a bit. Why should I be the one telling you all this? Direct speech. Relay, former Wagner platoon commander, addresses Russians indignantly.
My call sign is Relay 11 Show, commander of the 1st Platoon Direction. I want to ask you to give this video the widest possible coverage and share it everywhere. Just now, someone close to me, who is a friend of mine and who is currently staying near Sumy, got in touch. He just returned from the assaults. They were storming the settlement of Kondrativka. They sent a company of 100 men, only 8 survived. 8 of them, just 8, managed to take this settlement and raise the Russian flag over it, which signifies the capture of this settlement. It was my close friend, the fighter, with the call sign Afghanis, who raised the flag. So, because they survived, their commander told them, "You are cowards, you were hiding, damn it, we don't care at all whether you raise the flag or not, you all should have died. None of you were supposed to survive." This commander is Shershin from military unit 10,103. I believe that commanders like that shouldn't be allowed to live at all, yeah, but that's just my personal opinion. Creatures like that should be sent to the front lines or eliminated right away. And now, without giving the guys any time to rest, they gathered all of ours there, whoever they could, the Kayas. Some they even dragged back to the side, to the PVD, yeah, somewhere near zero. Basically, wherever they could retrieve them, the bodies of the guys. And now they're being told that they're 50s. What the hell are they even alive for, that they all should have died like dogs? That's what the commander, Cheshin, said. And there, without even letting them catch their breath for a couple of hours, eat, regain their strength. Yeah, because the guys say we went a week without food or water. And the command said, "You're not getting a damn thing." They didn't even send water by airdrop. And now they're sending them back into the assault. And they say, "You're all gonna die anyway."
Well, that's the situation. If you translate his incoherent speech even into Russian, into normal words, it sounds something like this. There's a group of people, 8 out of 100, who supposedly survived until Kondrativka was taken, raised their Aquafresh flag there, and then came back. The commander told them, so you survived, which means you didn't die, and that means you're refusers. And that's what he talks about in this video. Because you're supposedly refusers, we're sending you straight into new assaults without any rest, without food, without anything, without water, without any chance to catch your breath, just to simply wipe you out. That's the situation. That's the situation with the Russian. Immediately after this video was released, Russian propaganda launched an operation to explain that this was supposedly a psychological operation, PSYOP, that Ukraine was directing at Russia. However, all these claims were quickly refuted both by this very Wagner fighter himself and by his relative, who recorded a video from the Sumy region confirming that such things really do happen within the Russian military. In fact, the cases of such behavior by Russians and the growing outrage over it do not end there. There's a Telegram channel called Rozvidka Noim on our social networks, which posted the following story on its page. By the way, I also encourage you, friends, to subscribe to my Telegram channel. You can find the link to it in the description of this video. It's at Piknion News with an underscore. You can also find it in the Telegram search bar. So what did the Noim intelligence write about? Recently, a Russian soldier surrendered to them. He simply came over, raised his hands, and gave himself up to our troops. Why? They asked him, "Why did you do that?" Without saying a word, he simply took out his phone, handed it to our soldiers, and they went through his social media. So in one of the chats accompanied chat event, our soldiers were shocked by what they heard, by how the commanders talked to each other and what they discussed. For your acquaintance, meet the sergeant major of these Russians. His name is Mahmoud. Also present in the chat is the platoon commander Seryoga Gnezdo. Typical of the two commanders in the armed forces of the Russian Federation who sit in the company chat and decide where to dump inexperienced rookies and sick soldiers, unwilling to train them, unwilling to treat anyone. They just say, MRI? Why the hell does he need an MRI? Just do something to him. He only whines. Let's send him to be wiped out. They simply send them to the slaughter so that they die. Now I suggest you listen to one of the short messages from this Mahmoud.
Send it today while everything is ready. And tomorrow send Beliaikino to Rukino, Ye, Yagezarovo, Babaya. Tomorrow, I'll gather about 10 people for you then. Just the old folks. They can be sent straight to slaughter.
Just the old people, you can send them straight to slaughter. Babaikino, Turukino, and some other ones. That's the story. Sergeant Mahmoud, one of our prisoners, escaped from him, and this kind of situation is now spreading very widely in the ranks of the Russian Federation. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing. It just is what it is. You need to know this story about the enemy. Let's return to the battle map, directly to the events on the front line. Besides the Sumy region, the Kupiansk area has flared up for us, or more precisely, it was smoldering. Now it has simply ignited on the map. Here we can see the changes on the deep state map that were marked yesterday with quite a large area of territory, which signified the capture, the complete capture of the settlement of Dvorichna. The fighting there has been going on for quite a long time already. The advance towards Figurivka, as well as Zapadne and Kindrashivka, are at the epicenter of these events. In fact, the deep state team themselves even note that these changes are the result of updated information after confirming the Russian advance in this direction. The enemy had been putting pressure on Dvorichna here for a very long time, and in fact, now we can say that over time, they have completely taken control of the settlement they targeted from the very beginning when they established bridgeheads on the right bank of the Oskil River in this direction. Here is where this river flows, and in fact, now we can say that the Russians are forming quite a strong bridgehead on the left bank and on the right bank of the Oskil River. Here you see the blue water, that's the dividing line of the water. Everything to the left on this map is the right bank of the Oskil River, from which the Russians will obviously continue their attack on Kupiansk. I have repeatedly stated that, in fact, Kupiansk is the second direction after Donbass in the course of the summer campaign that the Russians will focus on. The third, obviously, will be Lyman, because that is also in the Donetsk region. Well, we'll get to that in a moment. Why did such success happen here? Well, it's very simple. Infantry and drones. The advantage in infantry and a fairly decent presence of drones among the Russians is producing results. They are also not giving up attempts to move their equipment across the Oskil, but so far, as of today, they have not succeeded. Just like in the Sumy region, they haven't yet brought equipment into the northern part of Sumy, and honestly, from what I know, they don't have much equipment there. Anyway, it's the same situation here. Here, on the contrary, they really want to bring in equipment. There is enough equipment here, but for now, they can't manage to move it over. However, if the area of control on the right bank expands and increases, then equipment will appear here as well. So Kupiansk, there are certain threats. Undoubtedly, there are certain risks. The road that connects Kupiansk with this section of the front is already under full fire control by the enemy, this very road, this route. That's why I think that during the summer campaign, Kupiansk as a hub from two directions, and this wedge here will be attacked very, very heavily. I expect here, well, really a very high intensity from the enemy, much higher in terms of focus. I think it will be more so than in Sumy or Zaporizhia and the like. Lyman, another direction where the enemy continues to carry out its operation. In the context of recent changes, by the way, you can even see on the deep state map the advance of the Russians in the Bilohorivka area. And now I'll show a video that demonstrates that in Horivka, the Russians have already stretched out and raised their so-called aquafresh. Here is this video from their social media. Just the other day, this week, I reported that, according to my information, enemy troops have advanced even further. They've already started attacking all the way to Serebryanka, and our forces are trying to push them out from there. But the fact remains, the Siversk direction is gradually narrowing. It hasn't been closed off yet. It's still too early to talk about closing off this salient, but the enemy's attention here is, well, undoubtedly quite significant enough to consider this direction. Ultimately, according to the General Staff's reports, it ranks among those that are, well, in third or fourth place in terms of the number of enemy engagements. That is, the battles for Siversk, which has already long been devastated by enemy artillery and enemy aviation, are inevitable in the context of this period of the summer offensive campaign. So that's where, friends, this initial assessment comes from. Right now, we have a very difficult situation on all fronts because the enemy is applying very, very strong pressure in this area. Donbas is number one, Kostiantynivka, Pokrovsk number one. As for Kostiantynivka, you can see the situation for yourselves. Kostiantynivka is being squeezed from the flanks. Previously, there was already pressure from Chasiv, and now a new large pincer has formed in the south. So despite the fact that the enemy is making advances, among other things, we can observe further advances in the area of Yablunivka. In this area, well, yes, with our counterattacks, but the enemy is making these advances. They have prospects for further advancement. The main point is that Kostiantynivka is now squeezed from three sides already. And the enemy is simply destroying this settlement, destroying Idris video from Kostiantynivka. Let's take a look. This is what the destroyed buildings there look like now. Not so long ago, this was still quite a rear city. It was in the rear. Now you can see how many buildings have been destroyed. It's not surprising because Kostiantynivka is regularly hit by enemy glide bombs, enemy aircraft, and FPV drones reach the city. And these destructions are the result of such attacks. Now I will show you an infographic from the French Pau Voyant Center, which has mapped the known recent strikes in the Kostiantynivka area by aerial and artillery munitions. About 1,000 such shells have fallen on the heads of our soldiers, our defenders in this direction. This is a very intense use by the enemy of all kinds of firepower, specifically on this section to inflict damage. Here is this map. You can see in red, the areas marked in red are not so much artillery strikes as they are 1,000 airstrikes, that is, airstrikes that the Russians have carried out recently on the area within the triangle between Minoat, Dobropilia, and Kostiantynivka. In fact, this advance by the enemy that we're talking about now, south of Plychnia towards Kostiantynivka, became possible precisely because of such intense fire, just absolutely relentless. They are literally leveling the area just to clear out the tree lines, dropping several KABs at a time. They don't hesitate to drop dozens of KABs on positions defended by just 2 or 3 of our infantrymen. This is actually the main reason why the enemy is advancing in this direction. And unfortunately, they are showing a tendency to keep advancing. Although at the moment we can talk about relative stabilization in this direction, there is still a tendency for the Russians to advance. For example, we are seeing a tendency for them to advance in Malinivka. The enemy has made gains, you can see, Aitin, Malinivka in this area. And these pressures will continue further and further. That's why the situation is extremely difficult. For our part, we are also trying to strike the enemy. However, we don't have the same number of Western glide bombs like the GBU-39 or the ESM Hammer. I don't know what's going on with our own glide bombs. They announced that they are in development, but for now, I don't know anything about them. Well, this is really our big mistake or our major shortcoming, that we don't have the kind of glide bomb resources the enemy has, and we haven't come up with anything to counter them. Until we come up with something, the situation at the front will continue like this. With the glide bombs, the situation is catastrophically difficult and it needs to be resolved. It needs to be resolved, but we are trying. From our side, we are also striking the enemy. This is the southern direction. Ukrainian aviation struck a warehouse of ammunition and fuel and lubricants, as well as a group of UAVs in the southern direction. Unfortunately, there is no video, but there is a nice photo of the mushroom cloud from the explosion, which could be seen from dozens of kilometers away. It's pleasing, it's beautiful, but unfortunately, it's not enough to somehow prevent the extremely intense shelling by the enemy, which they carry out on all our cities whenever they get close to the front. To fully grasp the scale of this destruction, you just need to look at a picture of Vovchansk. This is also a recent video from yesterday. This is what Vovchansk looks like after almost a year of fighting. A year of fighting since May 6th of last year. Now, of course, it's already June 13th, but that's a year and a month, a year and 5 weeks that have passed. And Vovchansk still doesn't exist just as it didn't before. It still doesn't exist at all. This is a very unfortunate situation. When the enemy approaches any of the settlements, this kind of destruction happens. That is why, unfortunately, the greatest dangers that arise in any situation elsewhere on the front always involve this kind of massive destruction. Kostiantynivka, Pokrovsk. Looking ahead, Siversk seems to be facing the same fate, as does Lyman. Looking ahead, I fear that the same could happen to the Sloviansk and Kramatorsk agglomeration. I'm also afraid that in the end, something similar is happening to Kupiansk, though not to the same extent. The Russians are destroying all of them. However, the closer they get, the more the landscape starts to resemble the lunar surface you see in Vovchansk. That's why the situation is extremely difficult right now. So what am I getting at with all this? The main request is for support for our soldiers. Right now, I know this might sound routine, but they truly need your help more than ever because the enemy's summer offensive is really reaching the peak of its capability. Thank you, friends, for your attention. Take care of yourselves, and until we meet again.